We know that 70% of climate vulnerable countries across the world are the most fragile. And this confluence of vulnerability and limited capacity of governments and institutions and people to cope should mean that these countries are prioritized by climate finance. And yet the reality is the opposite.
Climate finance refers to any form of local, national or transnational financing that seeks to support mitigation and adaptation actions that will address climate change. And it can be from public, private, as well as alternative sources of financing.
Although we have in climate finance mechanism a specific call to address the most vulnerables in first case, only 2% of the climate finance are reaching this population.
The current international system is based out of the challenges of at the end of the Second World War. The institutions of finance that were designed at that time were focused exclusively to address that need. And you can see now over the decades that it is not fit for purpose.
Climate finance is currently falling short in conflict-affected and fragile contexts. It's not going to the countries and to the people that need it most. The more fragile a country is, the less climate finance it receives from both bilateral funders and multilateral climate funds.
This lack of financing for fragile and conflict-affected contexts can be attributed to a number of factors. So from the donor perspective, there is a high risk aversion to investing in fragile contexts. Many donors face high pressure to demonstrate positive results quickly, and that leads to a preference for more standardized large-scale investments in more stable contexts that pose limited risk. And this works exactly against the very local, long-term solutions that are needed in fragile contexts.
Investing in resilience, as you rightly say so, is not really done by governments, because there's always this shortage of funds, and then you come up with a priority list, and you always say the resilience might come later.
From the recipient country perspective, overly complicated procedures to apply for funding is a challenge. Due to fragmentation in the finance landscape, different funds may have different rules and funding cycles, and it creates a very complicated landscape to navigate. Coupled with that, many conflict-affected settings might lack the state authorities or accredited partners that are needed to actually apply for funds and to absorb and use the funds.
There is already a community in the DR Congo that has been struggling with a carbon project to get it off the ground for verification. And because this process of verification is expensive. So I think philanthropy and family offices also need to get their priorities right and to put their money where the mouth is.
An interesting context where we can see a lot of the challenges and also we can learn a lot of lessons in terms of the issues that climate finance can have being deployed and reaching those that need it most is definitely Haiti. Last year we conducted a study looking at how climate change impacts and environmental degradation are contributing to driving the situation of extreme insecurity, humanitarian crisis and political crisis that the country is experiencing today. And that study illustrated a lot of these dynamics. First of all, key to highlight is that the security situation, the insecurity, the volatility that characterizes a country like Haiti, for example, makes it extremely difficult to implement adaptation projects that require a longer term kind of investment into the country. So the activities that you plan and you put into your project proposal to go to the funder may look good today, But tomorrow, the situation may change completely so that these activities are A, no longer implementable, or they don't respond anymore to the needs of the context and of the people in the area that you want to target. So the flexibility of the donor to adjust the project to different circumstances is key in this context.
Climate action and funding becomes more effective when built on existing efforts, especially local-level initiatives and structures. Second, donors should lower the transaction costs by streamlining the application process and making it more accessible. Third, effective collaboration and coordination across multiple stakeholders and existing initiatives is needed, including at the regional and transboundary levels. Fourth, donors, policymakers, and practitioners should focus on how money is invested and where it is going in addition to total spending. Fifth, a focus on peace-promoting projects and initiatives should be embedded in the institutional setup of climate funds.
So a lot of hurdles that need to be considered by the climate finance infrastructure to ensure that it can deliver to fragile and conflict-affected states. The good news is that these hurdles are being very much discussed and there are some really positive movements in terms of ensuring that things change going forward.